Did writing your first novel, did that change how you viewed the Vietnam War? And how did you and Jones think about Vietnam by the time 75 rolled around?
Well, that's a good question. Did it change my view on the Vietnam War? Not really, and that's the reason I wrote the book, because my view is my view, and I could see what was happening. Being pretty much out there in front, you could see that there were mistakes being made at the division level on down that were killing people. And it wasn't any sense in us doing a lot of stuff we did. We was out there thrashing around in the damn jungle. It didn't belong to us. It belonged to the enemy. They knew where we were all the time, just about, and we got the guys there with. But to cut through that, Jim, see, he had seen a different side of that even than I had. I was there from 66, 67, and Jim was there from, what, 72. There were two separate wars. I mean, when Jim was there, we were backing away. We weren't on the offensive anymore. We were pulling people out. We were pulling them down. We pulled everybody, all that people back into enclaves or whatever they call them. When I was there, we were out there attacking, which I thought personally was not a smart thing to do. I mean, we ought to have been security forces. We ought not to have been out there. We weren't set up for it to go out there. You had to have a 3 million man army over there to take care of that stuff. I mean, to do it right without a whole lot of casualties. But anyway, that's getting far afield here. Anybody else? No, I asked a happy question. What time's happy hour? No. Yes.
You said you got your first book contract. What was the story behind that? Did you know somebody who published you?
The first, like I said, to talk about how I got my first book contract, well, I'll tell you what, it was Jim, but it was really Willie Morris. But I had written, I decided I was going to leave the newspaper, which I did after this Watergate thing. I told you I was going to tell you about it. You're going to quit asking questions, I'll be all right. I was covering the courts there during the Watergate business. And of course, the Post had Carl Bernstein, who used to work for us. We fired him. He'd no longer got him a copy boy job over at the Washington Post and worked himself up back to the courts. And it was Bob Woodward who just got out of the Navy. And they were kind of, I don't know what they were doing, they were kind of sneaking around and stuff, and they were up to something doing that business. But they would print these stories, and my people would call up and say, wait a minute, is this true? I mean, I was getting called into the court first by the assistant managing editor and the managing editor. They said, look, the Washington Post is putting this on the first page. I said, look, I am talking to the United States attorney, and he's telling me this is not true. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I ain't never been lying. I grew up in a family of lawyers. I ain't never heard the United States attorney actually lying to somebody. I've heard a baby. But I cannot believe the United States attorney sit there and tell me all things lie. And it turned out it was true, and Woodward Bernstein got the credit. And what did I get? I should have gotten fired. Instead, they threw me in the briar patch. They gave me a collar, so I went whatever the hell I wanted to. They said, got me out of the court, whatever. They said, go live like collar. And I thought it was a great job, but I really, at that point, I decided to leave anyway. And I figured I might as well get what I get was good before I changed my mind about the collar. So I left. But that was the question anyway. What?
Book contract.
Oh, book contract. Well, anyway, I went home and wrote these 100 pages, which in those days you could do. It's very rare to be able to do that. These days, publishers, the first writing, home I think, won the whole book. Not always, but anyway, I wrote the 100 pages, gave an outline, and Willie Morris, bless his heart, had suggested an agent who he thought would be compatible with me, and I'd be compatible with him. And he was a very good agent. He was James Dickey's agent and John Didion's agent and all that. He was from Arkansas and had been a Rhodes Scholar like Willie was, and had been a pilot in World War II. And so I got with this guy, and within a week he sold this thing. And I was as astonished as anybody else, and just overjoyed. But that's the way that happened. And the sad thing is, it's kind of the way it does happen. It's like knowing somebody. And I don't know if I just wandered up there. I don't care how good it was. If I wandered to New York and knocked on somebody's door at Simon and Schuster or gone directly to Nelson Doubleday and said, hey, would you read this or whatever, what would have happened? But it's kind of, but it's got to be good. I mean, there can't be, they're not going to call it junk just because it knows somebody, but it gets you in the door. I know them ladies that fanning themselves in the back of the room. Everybody wants to get out of here. Any questions?
One more question there, Mr. Vice President, right here.
How many words did Jim Jones try to write a day, and did he write every day? Or did he only about
The question is, how many words did Jim try to write a day that he write every day? I can tell you that he tried to write every day when I knew him. Taylor could tell you more about the words. Jim, you can tell by looking at the progress that that is not a 5-day paid man, I guarantee you. That's a hard construction because and I know that just talking to Jim, he was very conscious about every sentence he wrote, every paragraph, and that takes a lot of time to do that. And those are big books. And those weren't these little thin screeds that are published by Knopf. That would also be my publisher. But they're the big old books that he was writing, and it takes a while to, make sense out of long sentences and complex paragraphs. I'd say he probably didn't write, if he was getting a half page, a page a day, I'd say it'd be pretty good. Listen to that. That's a guess. Yes, ma'am.
Did you hear the one about the author who needed to make the train on time?
The what?
Did you hear the one about the author who needed to make the train on time? Train. You have to catch a train.
Excuse me, you people bore me now, and I must away.